Hello everyone. I'm just going to talk through the work we're doing at the moment and how that fits into the GCSE. So we've started looking at the actual GCSE content now, and the area we started on is Judaism. And we have to know these bullet points here about the key beliefs within Judaism, and they're pretty straightforward, to be honest with you. I've already set you the task on Seneca to get going with this, and that will just help prep you for the kind of more detailed work that we'll do together. So I know a lot of you have already got the basics of this, and well done for those of you who've already completed the assignment. That's great. But I'm going to go through a little bit more detail now, the first bullet point, and I'm going to set up today's task. So the first bullet point, as you can see, is the nature of God, and then looking at the different features that God has. God as one, God as a creator, and God as a lawgiver, judge, loving, and merciful. Now, it's worth us taking a moment to consider what God is actually like in Judaism. The important thing to remember is that Judaism practically invents monotheism. Before Judaism, we just have polytheistic religions, and the gods in these polytheistic religions are like humans but with superpowers. They are much more similar to the Marvel comic universe than they are to a Hebrew conception of God, or what becomes a Christian or a Muslim conception of God. They are souped up, powerful, envious, lustful, sometimes honourable, sometimes stupid superheroes. And there are lots of them, and they have limited power. They have power over certain things, but not everything. And they fall out and they squabble, and that explains both the harmony and the disorder that's present in the world. They're really fascinating in their own right, and if you want to know more about them, I do recommend reading Stephen Fry's book Mythos, where he retells a lot of these stories. But the big crucial thing to remember about Judaism is its innovation in the sense of the way it sees God. So it changes the way that humans interact with the divine and that humans conceive of the divine. Now, monotheism's big idea, big breakthrough, fairly obviously, is that there is only one God, and that completely transforms what a God is. So rather than being petty and squabbling and limited in power, it becomes omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent, all powerful, all knowing, and all loving. It becomes this really difficult to comprehend abstraction that permeates every aspect of the creation, is responsible for all things, knows all things, and is this overwhelming power in the world. This is new, and it's an incredibly intoxicating idea, and ultimately we know from our position in history that this idea takes over religions and practically conquers the world. The major world religions now, Christianity and Islam, are monotheistic and are derivations of this original Jewish innovation. So this new idea, the crucial breakthrough of Judaism, is monotheism, and it's asking its followers, its believers, to conceive of God, to think of God in a totally different and new way. But actually thinking about God like that is really, really hard. Because this God of monotheism is so difficult to understand, he's often turned into visual representations. And within the religion of Christianity, that can often be via anthropomorphic art, and that means turning something into a human shape, and in this case it's God. So Michelangelo, on the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel in Rome, so this is a Catholic work of art, he draws God as an old white man with muscles, and that's there to depict omnipotence. The muscles and his gender show that he's powerful, and omniscience is depicted via the grey hair, because with age comes wisdom. Now, there are big advantages of showing God in an anthropomorphic way. It's easy to understand, the congregation gets it, the people in the church look at it and understand, and that very complex abstract notion of omniscience or omnipotence in this case suddenly become much more concrete and easy to understand, right? We know what a clever, strong, old man looks like, and we can understand now some of the key features of the divine. However, there are big problems with this as well, because God by definition is not human. God is far bigger, stronger, more complex as a notion than that. And to reduce God to a human form is potentially to run the risk of devaluing God. Believers might look at the symbol and forget they're looking at a symbol and start to imagine that God is an old white man on a cloud. So that's one problem, is that it might fundamentally misrepresent the nature of God. The second problem is that it might enshrine certain beliefs about who is important and who is not in a society. By showing God as a old white man, are we subconsciously being told that old white men are more godly, and therefore our society should honour them and give them prestigious positions? And if that were the case, then that's a really dangerous and negative side effect of depicting God this way. So trying to understand monotheism and trying to understand the monotheistic God has big problems. In Christianity, they're trying to address that by showing God as a human being, and on the one hand that helps, and on the other hand it can hurt. In Islam, the other big monotheism in the world, showing God as a human being is forbidden. You aren't allowed to use anthropomorphic images of the divine, and instead they try and focus on other aspects of Allah's personality, and they focus instead on his perfection or his order or his harmony. And they do that via geometric shapes, and you can see examples from the Asian and Arab world here on the screen. Now, these are not as easy to understand, but they are less misleading. So there are strengths and weaknesses with showing God anthropomorphically or showing God as a series of geometric patterns or symbols. Now, we are looking at Judaism. And Judaism, just like Islam, takes the commandment not to show God as a graven image very, very seriously. And so Judaism does not depict God visually. So if we're trying to get an angle on understanding exactly how do Jewish people view God, what is the divine like in Judaism, we don't get much of a helping hand from art. It is forbidden. And the irony of this, I suppose, is that as this commandment was being given to Moses, Moses was up on Mount Sinai communicating with God, and the Hebrews, who were wandering the desert, having been liberated from their slavery in Egypt, are worshipping a golden calf that they had manufactured. And Moses gets very angry and ultimately kills some people. So they really, really are not going to depict God visually. That's not something that's going to occur in the Jewish faith. So we need to then think, okay, well, how can we know about God in Judaism? What are the sources of authority that we turn to? And hopefully there's a really obvious answer here that's immediately jumping out to you, and that is the Hebrew Bible. So when we look through the Hebrew Bible, what Christians call the Old Testament, we find that God appears several times in something called a theophany, which I think is a really nice word, and that means an appearance of God. And what I would like you to do for this task is to find these Bible references. You can just Google them. Bible Gateway is a really good website. I want you to very briefly, I'm talking one sentence here, describe how God appears. And then I want you to unpack that appearance. So if God is shown as a burning bush, which he is on one of them, what what does that symbolize? What would fire symbolize? What would the bush in a desert symbolize? What is this revealing to us about God? And spending time really looking at the Jewish scripture and thinking deeply about what that says about God is the perfect way to try and unpack the nature of God according to Judaism. So please have a go at this. Spend your time on what does this reveal about God. Really think about it. Try and use your imagination there. And hopefully by the end of doing these 5 examples, you will have built up in your mind a series of symbols, images, ideas, which according to Judaism you're not allowed to paint, but they will be in your mind to help you conceive of the nature of God in the Hebrew Bible. Okay, thanks everyone.